You haven't felt the weather in weeks. Not really. Your coffee arrives before you're impatient. Your question gets answered before you finish typing them. Somewhere in the last 100 years, we built a world with the friction removed, and something in us went quiet, something that used to be awake. We call it comfort. It might be closer to dependency. A body that never meets the cold forgets how to warm itself. A mind that never sits with a hard question learns to reach for a screen instead. This isn't a failure of willpower. It's the predictable result of life engineered to remove every signal that once told us this is difficult and you will survive it. 2400 years ago, in a siege camp in northern Greece, one man refused to let that signal go quiet. In 432 BCE, Athens went to war with the city of Potidaea. Among the soldiers sent north was an Athenian foot soldier in his late 30s, Socrates. We know he was there, he says so himself. Years later, standing trial for his life in Athens, reminding the jury that he held his post at Potidaea when ordered, like any soldier, danger or not. But it's another man present that winter, Alcibiades, a young aristocrat serving beside him, who gives us the detail historians still discuss, recorded in Plato's Symposium. He describes a winter so severe that soldiers wrapped their feet before they'd step outside. Socrates walked out onto the ice barefoot, in the same thin cloak he wore in summer. Not because he lacked better clothing, because by every account of how he lived, he had spent years deliberately training himself not to need it. Alcibiades adds something stranger still, that during that same campaign, Socrates once stood in one spot from sunrise to the following sunrise, working through a single thought, while soldiers gathered to watch, unsure if it'd move at all. We should be honest about this source. It comes from a dialogue written by Plato decades later through the memory of a man who idolized him. It isn't a field report. Historians read it as a biography shaped by philosophy, not as verified fact in every detail. But the core of it lines up with what Socrates says about himself under oath on trial for his life. That he was a soldier who held difficult ground when easier ground was available. The Greeks had a word for this, ascesis. We inherited it wrong. It became asceticism, deprivation, punishment, suffering worn as virtue. But ascesis first meant something plainer, training. The same word used for an athlete drilling in the gymnasium, conditioning a muscle before it's ever tested. Socrates didn't stand barefooted on the ice because hardship was holy. He stood there because steadiness is a muscle too, and muscles that are never loaded disappear. The incidents at Potidaea isn't a legend about toughness, it's evidence that a mind conditioned under difficulty holds its shape when difficulty arrives uninvited, as it did for Socrates one final time. Years later, facing a death sentence with the same unsettling calm, the soldiers had watched off the ice. Modern psychology gave this a colder name, stress inoculation. The finding that controlled voluntary exposure to difficulty builds tolerance for the difficulty you never choose. The vocabulary changed, the principle didn't. What Socrates practiced on a frozen road in 432 BCE, a century of research has quietly confirmed a mind that never rehearses hardship has nothing to draw on when hardship shows up without an invitation. Somewhere in a war camp in northern Greece, a man took his shoes off in the snow, not to prove something to the soldiers watching, but because he already understood what they hadn't learned yet. The cold was never the enemy of the mind. It may be one of the last things left that can still ask it something real. Till then, peace.